As we enter Thanksgiving and giving season, what are the best ways to give back to those around you and people you know, or maybe you don't know? All right, let's hear about it. This is The Real Story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates with 35 years of experience talk about all things real estate. And this week, we are going to have actually a special guest to talk a little bit about how we're going to ask our clients to step into the giving season. But before we get to our guests, Sherry, what is up in the market this week?
We've had a busy week this week. We're always busy, but we really had a busy week. We wrote 3 offers last week. Unfortunately, not a single one of them got accepted. We're a little surprised by that. We're always hopeful and we write strong offers, but we will keep trying. It's an odd season for it to be active, and we're seeing lots of activity out there. As you know, we've got a listing over in Alameda, and it's been on the market for 2.5 months because we couldn't really show the property because there are tenants in both units. And we finally got an offer on Friday, and over the weekend and even into this morning, we've just had a deluge of inquiries about this property, including a backup offer. Where were these people 2 months ago when it came on the market?
I
So,
know. I think what's funny is that 2 weeks ago, if people go back and listen to our podcast, they'll hear us say how the market just didn't rebound after Labor Day like we expected. And then all of a sudden, it was so busy this last week that those of you paying attention, we didn't even do a recording last week because in order to write those 3 offers, we had to spend quality time with all of our buyers to make sure they knew about the properties. And it was like we had Zoom calls all day Monday and all day Tuesday, and there was no time. We normally record our podcast on Tuesdays, so it was. Uh,
well, we almost wrote 4 offers. One of them changed their minds and decided not to offer. So, yeah, there was a lot of conversation going on in coaching and writing.
yeah, yeah. So it's what we do best: spend time with our clients. And sorry, podcast listeners, you're second to our actual client.
That is true.
Um, yeah. Well, with that little synopsis on the market, we're going to turn to our guest for today. We're excited to welcome Devona Brazier. She is the director of outreach at Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church, which is where I am a member. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about the asks that we're going to have for our clients this year is around giving, or what are the asks, and hear a little bit more about what she does and a little bit about the housing situation in Walnut Creek. So, welcome, Devona, to the real story.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, director of outreach. What is the director of outreach at a church? What does that mean?
Yeah, so all churches want to engage with the community, and that includes the community who comes to our church and the community who's just around our church. So as the director of outreach, I'm involved with our civic partnerships, with the schools, with the police department, the fire department, the apartment buildings that are directly adjacent to our campus. And then I'm also the person who helps manage the connection between our church member volunteers and our nonprofit partners, both internationally and locally.
Wow, that I kind of knew some of that, but that's that's a big area of responsibility.
Yeah.
How did you end up, like, what brought you to the place where that you were the director of outreach? Like, why that as opposed to something else?
Sure. I mean, I do have a background in working with children, so it would make sense for me to work in children's at a church, but that isn't actually how it ended up coming to be. Interestingly, I think it's built out of life experience more than professional experience. So, like I said, I interface with our international partners. Well, when I grew up, my dad was a diamond buyer, and so he did a lot of work in many countries across the world. And so, in my mind, it didn't make any difference whether he was traveling to New York or Hong Kong or Singapore, like Africa, all of those places were on the table. And then also my hero growing up was my aunt, Lisa, who lived for 7 years in Niger with the Peace Corps. So
Mm.
when I had the opportunity as a young adult to do some international travel, I said yes. And so that gave me some experience with working with justice-oriented nonprofits that are international. Then I sidestepped for a while when I was living with my husband and my first daughter. I did a lot of work we lived in Akron, Ohio, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Rust Belt, but it's an interesting community, especially Akron, Ohio. There's a lot of racial justice action happening there because the city is about 40% African American, 60% white, and
Oh, wow.
everybody lives intersected. So there's, I learned a lot about racial justice and redlining and housing equity, things like that. And then poverty relief because there was a lot of poverty in our area. And so it was part of my life experience. So that when we moved here, it just kind of made sense that as I moved professionally into work, I would be kind of intersecting all those things. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I don't think I would have, when I think of Ohio, I don't think about it being integrated. And so a town like Akron, I would not have, I have no reference point. So that's fascinating to hear what that's like. I grew up in Oakland at a time when it was um, accredited as one of the most integrated cities in America. There was lots of different ethnic groups that live side by side, and it's one of the challenges I had as an adult and a parent that my kids did not have that same experience. I mean, my play group was myself, an African American, a Latino boy, and the best man at my wedding was of Chinese descent. And so it's like I didn't know the world didn't operate like that till I got to be an adult, and to be honest, I never would have thought Ohio would have had something like that. So thanks for sharing that part of the story.
Yeah. I like to say Akron is kind of like a tiny Oakland.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Um, One of the things that our church does and that we ask our clients to participate in is a food drive for the Care Cottage, and that's taken some ebbs and flows over the years. Can you explain what the Care Cottage is, in partially in relationship to Walnut Creek Press, but really what it does public facing?
Sure. So, 25-ish years ago, a tiny closet inside our church building proper held a bunch of clothes that people had donated, and people used it kind of as like a swap and also to meet immediate needs of congregants. And then the church property where we housed pastors and other ministry facing people there was a little house on the corner of our main campus that was now vacant. So they moved that clothing ministry out to that house. And then they started to do more outward facing, just relief work with clothing for years and years and years. And people could come twice a year and get clothes. Eventually they added food resources. And now in the recent past, especially post-COVID, we've found that the food part of that mission is a lot more heavily utilized by our guests than the clothing portion. And so people can come to the Care Cottage to receive groceries monthly, depending on the size of your family, depends on how much free grocery assistance you get. We're Food Bank of Contra, Costa, and Solano County Food Pantry. So most of our food is purchased through the food bank. It's also donated by our congregants and neighbors. And all of that food is purchased with monies from the church. So it's a 100% donations mission, and I'm the only paid employee. So we have about 40 volunteers who do all of the implementation of that mission. We see about 150 families a month, and that's going up.
I can only imagine. I know that with we lament about inflation, but for those of us that can afford our bills, it's just uncomfortable. But for those on the margins, the inflation really, the necessities become even harder. So part of the ask this time of the year isn't just the regular monthly food distribution. There's some special asks for around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those are? And are we doing it the same way this year? I mean, like with all the changes that have happened.
Yeah, it is changing. So in previous years, you could, like many other places, lots of churches do this. You could get a holiday food box where they give you your pantry staples to help you get through the month to kind of divert costs so that you can maybe purchase toys for your family or go out to dinner or do something extra nice. Over the past year, we switched from a food box based mission to that full grocery. So everyone who comes in can choose their own groceries. We are going to continue that grocery room through November and December, but we anticipate that we're going to see at least a 25%, maybe 50% increase in usage because of our regular holiday guests wanting to come. And on top of that, we do holiday extras, so desserts and bonuses that you can't necessarily get from the food bank. We're going to give them a little bag of those on top of their regular food ministry grocery shopping trip.
How fun to be able to be a little bit celebratory even while you're, that's great. Are we doing the Christmas room? I hate to ask. I should have asked you that before we got started. The gift. Oh,
Oh yeah, we are.
all
We
right.
never won't. I don't know if we never won't, but we definitely will be doing that also this year. So yes, families will come in, and if you have a child under 12 and you are able to get one of our limited spots for a shopping appointment, you get 2 free toys per child, plus a set of warm like hat or gloves or fuzzy socks and Christmas decorations for your household too. So.
Oh, how fun.
Mhm.
Oh, that's nice. Um, so so for those of you that are on our regular sphere, we are in our we can drop off grocery bags with a list of some of the things that are being collected, but we also can help you get connected with the Christmas room if there are certain age appropriate gifts that we can connect you with. So reach out to us, and we'll have that contact information in the show notes. And if you just want to drop things off right at Walnut Creek Press, we'll have that contact information there also. Anything else about the Care Cottage that you think it's important for people to know? Can they volunteer? Is it easy to volunteer, or anything else that might be helpful?
That's a great question. It is easy to volunteer if you don't mind folding clothes and you don't mind moving heavy things through a house that was built in the 50s with narrow hallways and narrow doors. So, yes. It's very easy to donate, especially food. There's a red door that's on the parking lot side, and during our open hours, the top of that door is unlocked, and you can just drop your donation right inside. Um, if we are there, we'll give you a donation receipt so that you can use it on your taxes. On the third Sunday of every month, if you want to give it a try from 8:30 in the morning until noon on the third Sunday of every month, you can come and volunteer, and I'll show you what to do because I'm down there for that entire window of time. And if you want to volunteer in the Christmas room to help people with that shopping, we always have open spots for that because it takes so many people to run that. But we do operate Monday through Friday only. So it's not the sort of thing, apart from that third Sunday, it's really hard to do if you are not yet retired. So there's
Okay.
station.
So Devona, I have a question. There's food donations as well as toy donations.
Yes.
So do you have a list of toys that you recommend that people want?
Yeah. We do have a list of recommended toys, mostly because we want to make sure that the toys are easy for our guests to operate. So we don't want heavy electronics, and we want the gifts to be under $25 so that there's some equity in what is available to each family. But that's still $50 generally of toy gifts for each person. I would say if you were thinking of purchasing a toy for our toy drive, think of a child who is under 12 and what is a durable toy that you would buy for your child if they were that age. And that's a great toy. And if we end up with donations and there's 100 Batman action figures, that's great because kids love Batman. And so, every family will have the option to pick that. But we like Legos, we like puzzles, we like Barbie dolls, sports equipment, dress clothes, craft kits, anything that is not heavily reliant on batteries.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So I know that what the work that you do goes beyond just the Care Cottage, as you mentioned, and we were talking earlier about Hope Solutions, which is a local nonprofit. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that Hope Solution does, and particularly, I know that there was a housing initiative that they had entered into. Can you tell us about, well, first Hope Solutions and then about the housing?
Yeah, Hope Solutions is one of our partners at Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church also. I'm really excited about their organization because they provide permanent housing for people who were formerly unhoused. Um, I don't know the full ins and outs of how they offer that, but I know that it's with wraparound services. And I know you can't get evicted from Hope Solutions as long as you keep your lease, but it's never income that is breaking your lease. So if you can't pay rent, that's not going to get you evicted. They have thousands of units in Contra Costa County. They did recently enter into a partnership with Grace Presbyterian Church. There was some unused part of their property. I think it was a set of basketball courts that they actually took down, and now they're building 6 tiny homes for people to live in on that property. It's under construction. I know that they've hit a couple of snags with like water metering and stuff like
Hmm.
that because it's a new idea. So they're
Yes.
trying, they have to work out the details with the utility company and they have to work out the details with the permitting, but they were able to get it through and they're underway. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So they don't own thousands of units, right? Like, so how do they, I mean, I think they have a couple apartment buildings that have been
Yes.
donated or funded over the years. So what more does that look like?
So I wish I could speak more expertly on this. I know that they own the college park or one of those apartment units all out.
Garden, yeah,
Garden Park,
yeah.
Garden Park Apartments. They own that outright. They own some smaller pieces of property. Mostly they lease out units inside other apartment complexes that are in the area where their clients would want to live.
No, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they might own 50 out of 200 units, or they might own 15 out of 30 units. At Lakeside Apartments in Concord, in the Monument Corridor, they own the majority of the apartments in that, but they don't own all of them. So not everyone who lives there is a resident of Hope Solutions, but most of them are.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. I think one of the things that's interesting, thinking about where Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church is in downtown Walnut Creek, and normally my mindset is that Walnut Creek is a suburb, but more and more as it's developed with a lot more housing units, it feeling much more urban as an urban center than a suburban center. And so, along with that growth as a community, it seems like the unhoused population is becoming um, more important for us to attend to. So part of the reason why care cottages exist. Can you talk about what is the unhomeless population, unhoused population? I can't find the right words. I did this a couple weeks ago too. So unhoused population in Walnut Creek, what does that look like, and how might people enter into that?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things about it. I've lived a Greater Walnut Creek for 5 years, maybe 6 years. And so for me, Walnut Creek has always felt urban,
Mhm.
because that's when the construction really happened and the apartments started coming up. So in my experience of Walnut Creek, there have always been a segment of the population that was unhoused, as there are in any urban center, especially one that's got a great library right next to a big park where there's lots of public space where you're free to be no matter what. And add to that the BART station. In my 3 years since working at Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church, directly connected with the Care Cottage, and our building is also adjacent to the Trinity Center. If anyone's familiar with that day center for people who many of their they call them members. Many of their members are unhoused. Um, for the first 3-ish years, that population has been largely the same people. So the volunteers at the Care Cottage knew a lot of them by name. They knew their stories. They knew how they ended up in the situation that they did. They knew which street those people grew up on when they were kids in Walnut Creek. Recently, perhaps because of decisions that our government has made in recent months, that population has become more transient, and a lot of people were destabilized from where they had potentially been in a tent encampment or things like that. And they kind of dispersed through Walnut Creek. And we got basically people moving here from outside of the area. And so they didn't have, it kind of changed the culture around the care cottage, and even just in corners and little doorways, you kind of noticed that things had gotten destabilized.
Mhm.
Seems to be getting better. We have really good resources in our city to be able to interface with an unhoused person and get them the resources that they need. So at least in our block, I know we've all been relying heavily on CORE, and CORE has been doing a really good job of getting people to where they need to go. But yeah, it was a lot of local Walnut Creek people for a while, and now it's people coming from Oakland, people coming from the peninsula, people coming from Marin, things like that.
Mhm.
You reference core. I don't know what that is.
CORE is one of the county funded resources for unhoused people. You can call 211 and they will come and they will bring a vehicle, and they'll interact with anybody who might be in trouble or causing a disturbance, but they're not really being criminal. And
Hmm.
they'll say, hey, we have these resources for you. Let me help you pick up all your stuff. We'll put it in the car. I will drive you to that place where you can get the resources that you need. And they're very intentional and relational, and they do a great job of being respectful to anybody that you might have to talk with to help, if they're in the wrong place doing the wrong thing.
That's great. I think that the respectful part of that, I think, is one of the key things that I've had to manage for myself. And even like I'm trying to find the right words to be respectful about talking about the unhoused population. And one of the things that is often overlooked when we interact uh, with this population is that we don't look them in the eye, we don't ask their names, we don't offer our names. We treat them as the other with a capital O rather than just another person who has their own sets of needs and requirements at any particular moment. And it's much easier to hold them at arm's length and not treat them as people because, you know, metaphorically and otherwise, we don't want to become dirty, right? And I think that when we primarily see the other as somebody who's going to harm us or degrade us in some way, that we've automatically made the problem worse rather than just. And to be honest, right, some of them are in different places where carrying on conversations isn't the easiest for them. But when you have to fight for figure out where you're going to sleep that's warm or dry, or where your next meal is coming from, or how to even protect what belongings you have because you don't have a safe place to store it. And some of the unhoused population are the working unpoor. They're the working unhoused, excuse me, finding the right vocabulary. And they're couch surfing, they're living with friends, they're living out of their car, and they can only use so many days up on somebody's couch before they naturally wear out their welcome. And it's with the cost of housing in our area, it is just it's a huge problem for those on the margins, and it's not always indicative of a bigger problem.
Yeah, I think the understanding of what it means to be homeless or to be unhoused needs to be broadened. Your image is just like the person on the street corner who's shouting and isn't clean. But actually, most people who are unhoused are the couch surfing kind, or someone who's living with their sister. It's basically anybody who doesn't have a permanent address. So they might be living in their car, they might be staying with this relative, that relative, that relative. And it's a mindset shift of saying, like, a lot of these people are just desperately trying to get from this month to next month. Maybe they have medical debt, maybe they lost their job, whatever it is that put them out of their house. And with enough stability, they could get back on their feet. For other people to get that stability is just a lot harder because they have other confounding problems like drug addiction or mental illness, or no family in the area. So it really is, it's a mindset shift. You have to think, what what is the one thing I can do in this situation? Sometimes what you can do is give someone privacy, like they're not having their best day. So just don't look at them. Sometimes the best thing that you can do is treat them like a person and have a cup of coffee with them. Sometimes the best thing you can do is call core. Sometimes the best thing you could do is give them food. Like it's okay if you don't know what the best thing is, but remembering that they're a person is always the best thing to do.
Any other organizations besides Hope Solutions that would be good for us to know as we think about interacting with
Mhm.
the marginalized in our community?
Yeah, I think always remember that you can help anybody call 211, which is the county resources, and 211, they're trained to help get somebody in the right stream for them.
Okay.
Um, if you know somebody is living in their car, Winter Nights has a safe parking program. I don't have their number available.
We'll put it
Like,
in the show notes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
yeah. So if you know somebody who's living in their car, Winter Nights has a place where they can live in their car safely with access to security, restrooms, running water, things like that. Um, Believe it or not, you can call 911 or the police department and not necessarily have to have a police intervention because there are mental health resources that are available through the county. There's suicide prevention or intentional drug overdose prevention. All of that is just an available resource that our tax money is paying for. So, and the Walnut Creek Police Department has a homeless task force that goes intentionally building relationships with people who live in different encampments or in different parks, and try to be intentionally proactive about building relationship with this population. I think it's working. I don't think it's solving. It's definitely not solving, but it's working to at least keep people from like falling off completely.
Yeah. Sherry, do you have any other questions? I kind of dominated because I know.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's been fascinating to hear about all these other things that you don't normally think about, or in my case, even know about. I mean, Winter Nights, never heard of it. 211, never heard of it. So thank you. It helps us know how to help other people.
You're
Which,
welcome.
Any final thoughts you'd like to share with us? Is it okay if we share your contact information in the show notes in case somebody wants to reach out?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Um, so with that, I think we're going to transition into our speed questions. It's not quite as relevant because it wasn't fully about housing, but it was a little bit. So here with our non sequitur, here are some random speed questions.
Okay.
if nothing else, it'll lighten the mood a little bit. So, um, Home Depot or Lowe's?
Home Depot.
Fireplace or fire pit?
Fireplace.
This Old House or Property Brothers?
This old house 100 times over.
Yeah, almost everybody says that. And we agree, by the way. DIY or hire a handyman?
DIY.
Yep. Martha Stewart or Joanna Gaines?
Martha Stewart.
Favorite house color?
Oh, good grief. All of them, not the same color as my neighbor.
What color is your neighbor's house?
My house is white and my neighbor's house is white, but I can't afford to paint my house. So
Oh, all right.
everyone's house is white these days.
Yeah, it's the most popular house color right now.
We have a funny story in Lafayette. We have an office mate who remodeled her house and she wanted to paint it white, and the planning department said you cannot paint it white. There's too many white houses, so she had to paint her house a different color. So somebody's paying attention.
Yeah.
And then she painted it white after they approved it.
And her address is.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And her initials are.
All right, last question. What are the three things that are always in the trunk of your car?
The bags that I forgot to donate back to the grocery store, an umbrella, and dog hair.
Oh, that's funny.
You put your dog in the trunk?
Yeah. It's a big dog.
Love it. I love it. Well, those are all good answers, and we agree with all of them. So thank you.
Devona, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. And to all our viewers, if you had any questions about the ministry at Walnut Creek Press or Hope Solutions or anything else that was mentioned, check out our show notes. We'll have her contact information there. And if you liked our discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast and recommend it to your friends. But for now, that's it for this week for The Real Story. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.